Hi. Before going to video, please subscribe to my channel for more interesting stuff.
Story from r/creepyencounters. Posted by u/the zombie medic. Absolute horror. To preface this story, I am a paramedic and I have been for about 10 years. Working in emergency medicine, you get to see the weirdest and the worst of people, so it's not too uncommon for these types of stories to exist. However, in my 10 years, I have never experienced pure terror incarnate like I had about 6 years ago. I will not be revealing specific or identifying details as this pertains to privacy and HIPAA. This may be a bit long, but I hope it's worth the read. About 6 years ago I moved to another city for work. I worked for a 911 ambulance service that responded to calls in the city, as well as the county, which had a few other small towns. The city itself was not a large city, sub 100k people. Working for that service required working 24-hour shifts. It wasn't particularly busy, maybe you'd get 5 to 10 calls in 24 hours and generally get some decent sleep at night. This city was a pretty rough place as the oil industry had boomed there, which drew all sorts of folk from around the country to work in the oil fields nearby. One night in January, me and my partner, who was an EMT basic, received a call in the next town over. It was about 2 a.m. when the call came out, and the only information we had was that a person in an apartment called 911 after hearing the downstairs neighbor screaming for help. We responded emergent as the details were very limited. When we arrived on scene, police and fire department were already there and we were getting ready to make entrance into the building with them. The person who called 911 was there and told us which apartment she heard the screaming from. We attempted to pound on the door at first to get the resident to come to the door. When no one answered, the fire department got ready to spread the door and make entry. Luckily the landlord showered up and gave us keys to get into the unit. As we opened the door, the creepiness started. The apartment was pitch black. Not a single light, as if no one was home. Police entered first and with our flashlights, we followed. Looking around the apartment, the kitchen and dining room looked like a hoarder's nest. I am not exaggerating when I say there were literally 5-foot-tall mountains of garbage/food/dishes in the kitchen and the same in the living room, but with magazines/clothes/garbage. This meant there was only a very narrow walkway to navigate the apartment. Officers proceeded down the hallway ahead where the bedroom and bathroom was. One of the officers stopped at the bathroom door as there was light shining from underneath. The officer opened the door and just stood in the hallway. With a flat tone he said, "She's in here." I walk in first into the bathroom. The first thing I notice is the peculiarity of the light in the bathroom. It is a very pale yellow light coming from a single bulb on the ceiling, similar to those old heat lamps that used to be common in bathrooms. The light gave off an odd vibe as it was just so unnatural light. The next thing I noticed is the lack of anything in the bathroom. No floor mats, no toilet cover, no towels, no knickknacks. Just nothing. Empty. Except the vanity which contained the sink. On top, in the bowl of the sink were approximate 20 to 30 makeup bottles piled up. Some were opened and leaking, causing there to be powders and liquids everywhere. The last thing I noticed was the body of an elderly woman lying naked in the tub. As I walk closer, I can see her lying in her side, nearly in the fetal position. Her skin is pale, and there is about 8 inches of water in the tub. Looking at her face, her eyes are closed, and her head is against the bottom of the tub with her mouth and nose completely submerged under the water. My partner steps in behind me. He suggests we just call the coroner and inform them of the body. 2 officers pile into the bathroom behind my partner so that there is 4 of us in this tiny bathroom, with me next to the lady in the tub. With me being who I am, I decide to do my due diligence and at least make sure the lady is dead. I kneel down next to the tub and reach my arm in and put my fingers on her neck, attempted to check for a carotid pulse. In an instant, without warning or the slightest hint of movement, the woman springs up out of the tub with the agility and speed of a feral cat. The only reaction I was able to manage was to just stand up as quick as possible, and I just stood there staring at her. She stared back at me, eyes wide as can be, before she started screaming at me. She attempted to cover herself with her hands as best she could while sitting in the water still. I quickly look around and notice everyone else who was in the bathroom with me, bolted out of there, not a single soul in sight. I try to steel myself and try calming the lady down, telling her who I was and why I was there. She denied screaming and told me she does this every morning as she has some kind of joint condition, and soaking in warm water helps ease her joint pain. Now at this point I have my doubts and I have to question this woman's sanity. I question her regarding self-harm, and address what potentially could be interpreted as suicidal behavior. She denies all of it. The next step is to determine her mental capacity to ensure she is in the right frame of mind to make reasonable and appropriate decisions. She answers all my other questions appropriately, and at this point per the law she is able to refuse any and all care as she is mentally sound. I ask her if she will at least allow me to check her vitals so that I can be sure she is healthy and I can add it to my report. She vehemently refuses and tells me to get out of her house, which she has the right to. I acknowledge and have her sign a refusal of service form. As I leave the bathroom, my partner, the two officers that were in TH bathroom with me, along with two other officers and firefighters that were waiting in the apartment are just staring at me with eyes wide and gaping mouths, speechless. I don't say a word and we all leave the apartment. Once we all got outside I had the most uneasy, uncontrolled fit of laughter. My partner and the officers start laughing too. I thought I might have shit myself. My partner told me later that all he remembers is seeing her move, hearing me say "oh fuck," which I don't even remember, and running out of the bathroom. I wish I could say I never saw this lady again, but that would be untrue. If you all enjoyed this and want to hear part 2, let me know. Part 2 of Bathtub Lady. This one should be a bit shorter since you already have the backstory. Like I said after this call, I was able to laugh about it once my heart stopped racing. I figured I would never have to see this lady again and that gave me comfort. I told the story several times to family, friends and co-workers just because of the sheer shock value. This part of the story, I've only told a couple people, because most probably can't stomach it, so be warned this will contain some graphic content or imagery. About 3 months after the first call with the Bathtub Lady, I am working with another EMT basic partner. Not the same one as before, but he is well aware of the story. So the day is going by like normal, and nightfall comes. I'm hoping to get some sleep as generally night is a little calmer. Each of our stations have a few bedrooms with twin beds to allow us to at least sleep somewhat comfortably. I take off my boots and lay down and doze. I always keep my radio turned way up and by my head so I can wake up if we get a call. Sure enough, tones drop on the radio and I wake up. Looking at the clock, it's around 4 a.m. Radio traffic requests the ambulance for a welfare check on an individual who has not been seen for a while. Me and my partner get up, put our boots on and start responding to the address. As we get closer I start recognizing the area. Before I even see the building I tell my partner, I swear to God if it's the same fucking lady. He just laughs and we continue. As we pull up on scene, sure as shit. Same fucking building. At this point my heart starts to race again. A few officers are already on scene. As I get out of the ambulance, one of the officers comes up and tells me, the lady we are here for has a friend that works at the gas station nearby. The friend told 911 that the lady usually comes and visits him every day, but that the friend hasn't seen her in a few weeks. The officer also tells me there is an odor coming from the apartment complex. If you work in EMS or have been around such, you know what that means. If not, then I won't spoil it just yet. I ask the officer if she is familiar with this person, or has heard the story of the last encounter. The officer tells me she is not, but her two co-workers behind her were on the original call with me and are smiling, but not saying a word. I tell the officer who the person is in our last run-in with her. The officer just raises her eyebrow a bit and says, okay. So, we approach the apartment complex yet again. As I open the main door, you can immediately smell the odor permeating throughout the entire complex. We walk downstairs to the door of this lady's apartment. I bang on the door a few times and shout, ambulance. No response. Officers bang on the door. No response. We try to get a hold of the landlord again to give us access, but he is unavailable. Over the radio I request the fire department, and request they bring the door spreader. The fire department arrives and they come downstairs, and set up the door spreader. If you don't know, a door spreader is a tool that the fire department places between the two door jambs, and use a lever to start pressing the door jambs apart, freeing the latch from the door frame so you can get in. As they finally get the door open, that awful wafting smell spills out of the apartment. Same thing as last time. Pitch black in the apartment. Piles of garbage all around the apartment 5 feet high that barely allows you to move through. Though this time it's a bit different. There are thousands of flies buzzing around. Again, the officers enter first with us following with our flashlights. One of the male officers gets down the hallway to the bathroom and opens the door. He looks back at me, shakes his head and continues forward. My EMT partner, who is pretty new, is right behind me. I turn to him and tell him to wait in the hallway and that I'll let him know if I need him. I was trying to be nice and spare him. The officer continues down the hallway toward the bedroom. At this point the anxiety is increasing because now, we are in uncharted territory and once again, I have no idea what we are going to find. The officer eventually makes it to the bedroom. I see him shine his light into the bedroom, then uses the bend of his elbow to cover his mouth and nose. He waves me over. As I walk to him, the smell only gets stronger. I peer in the bedroom with my flashlight, and that's when I see her. The bedroom is set up so the bed is right in the middle of the room with the head pressed against the wall. So there is some space on either side and at the foot of the bed. Or at least there would be if her floors weren't filled up to the height of the bed with clothes, magazines, books, food, and garbage. At the foot of the bed are two large 4-foot-tall piles of random shit that at the base are probably 4 feet in diameter. I know it's hard to visualize, but picture two large conical-shaped mounds side by side at the foot of the bed. In the tiny space between the two huge mounds and the foot of the bed lies Bathtub Lady. Now this lady is a very small old lady. When I saw her the first time, she maybe weighed 90 pounds. She is also a white lady. Stunned for a moment, I stand there next to the officer and just look. This is the part that gets grotesque. Bathtub Lady is lying perfectly on her back, with her arms folded up and crossed in front of her like you would see a skeleton doing in the movies. Bathtub Lady's skin looks almost like paper. It is dried out and shrunken, turning black, and rotting. The level of decomposition from her is one I hadn't seen before. Her hip bones were visible where the skin had cracked and receded. Her kneecaps were coming through her skin. A few ribs were just barely visible poking through the skin on the sides of her upper abdomen. Her hair was beginning to fall out. Her lips were gone. Her eyes were gone. I got a bit closest to look. All I kept thinking was, if you wake up, this officer's probably gonna draw and shoot you in the head. I walked a little closer to look. She was almost perfectly preserved like a mummy. There was absolutely nothing left of her eyes. The sockets were completely empty with the exception of maggots crawling around in the sockets. From behind me I hear a couple quiet, muffled gags. I walk back out to my partner. I tell him, sorry man, but we need the body bad and I need your help. Everyone walks outside to get some fresh air. The officer that was in the bedroom with me, gagged a few more times outside, but luckily didn't vomit. The one good thing about this is we had recently been given these really nice PAPR respirators from FEMA for a recent Ebola outbreak. My partner grabbed the body bag, and I grabbed the PAPRs. We put our gear on and walked back inside. The officer that was with me, like a fucking champ, came back inside as well without a respirator, and held the flashlight for us. Me and my partner had to spend 10 minutes just clearing out all the trash so we had enough room to put the body bag down next to Bathtub Lady. Once we got enough room, the sketchy part came. If you ever seen a body with that amount of decomposition, it is very brittle. We attempted to move her over as carefully as we could, as to not break anything. However, when we attempted to move her, she was stuck. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I was at the head, my partner was at the feet trying to move her over. I put my arms down her back and neck to support the head so it didn't break off. I got down to look as I lifted to see what we were getting stuck on. As I lifted I saw, but it was already too late. As I lifted, the skin on her back was stuck to the carpet, so as I lifted it started peeling off her ribs and spine. We had no other choice as we were unable to cut the carpet at this time. As we lifted her up, all of the skin came off her back and stayed stuck to the floor, almost like some sick chalk outline, which is when I saw it. What seemed to be like 1,000 maggots crawling around on the inside of her skin between the skin and her back. We moved her gently into the bag, luckily not breaking anything. We got the bag out and into the ambulance where we would then transport her to the funeral home with our windows rolled down and emergent, so we wouldn't have to stay in the ambulance as long as possible. So that's my story of Bathtub Lady. Sorry for the gross details. What we figured is she died shortly after our first encounter with her, and that we may have been the last ones to see her alive. Story from r/creepyencounters. Posted by u/Nasser_nomam. This is almost over. Good luck. Today I had to take my husband to a doctor's appointment and also pick up a few essentials since we haven't been out in a month. As we were wrapping up our errands, I went into a big chain pharmacy for one item. I grabbed my item and headed right back to the front. As I walked toward the line, a man came in and passed very close to me, despite the aisles being wide. Then he made an immediate U-turn and got very much in my personal space and said, "Ukraine?" I said, "Excuse me?" He said, "You're from Ukraine, right?" Now, I am from Texas, born and raised. I've never had anyone ask if I was from anywhere else. So I just laughed and said, "No, I'm from here in Texas." He acted like this was crushing news and said, "Are you sure you aren't European?" And I said, "Pretty sure." Then he started rambling about social distancing, making fun of people for doing it, basically, all while being very much in my bubble. I kept edging away, But he just came closer and he kept saying, "This is almost over. Good luck." Then he walked away and immediately came back and got in line right behind me with a box of dryer sheets. They had appropriate distances marked with tape. He said, "So, what do you do around here?" And I said, "I'm not from here, I just came over for a doctor's appointment." By then it was my turn at the temporary self-checkout. For whatever reason, they had set up the self-checkout within about 3 feet of the regular checkout, so as I was doing self-check, he was at the regular register. He continued to talk to me, saying, "This is almost over," repeating the good luck line over and over, and laughing at the checkers for wearing masks. Then he reached over from the other register and handed me a card, telling me, "I build houses, give me a call." I reflexively took the card and was just rushing to finish up and go. As I walked out, he called after me to wait up. But I just left and ran to my car and jumped in. My husband said, "What's wrong?" And I started to tell him the story. Just then, the man came rushing out and looked around. He saw us in our car, and just stared for a minute, then turned around and went back in the store. As I drove away, I could see him getting a basket and starting to walk around in the store. It was definitely strange and gave me a very uncomfortable vibe. I don't know what he was doing or thinking, but I'm very glad my husband was with me.
Thanks for watching. Please do like, share, comment and subscribe for more videos.